everyone, so today I'm going to be doing my October wrap up. I read 30 books in October. Technically I read 29, but I'm saying 30 because I worked so hard to read 30 and I didn't get to 30, so we're gonna say 30. And so before I even start the video, I know people are gonna be like, oh, how do you read so fast, blah blah blah. I get those kind of comments all the time when I do wrap up, so it's nothing I'm not used to. So I usually am reading all the time. I love reading. Reading isn't a competition for me. I generally just love reading. I'm reading all the time when I'm at home, when I'm at work. I also cannot read without watching something, so I'll be reading while I'm rewatching something I've already seen before. So we're just gonna get into the books because I actually have so many that I want to talk about. So I'm not going off my Goodreads, I'm going off my notes, so the ratings might be a little hard for me to remember. That's fine. So we're gonna start off with the thriller section. I split this video into sections, so hopefully I did this right. So hopefully the screen will just be split up into section time bar, but if not, I have the timestamps in the description box. But we're gonna start with the thrillers that I read. So these are the thrillers that I read this month. I read The Guest List, which I gave 2 out of 5 stars. I read this for a vlog, I believe. So this book is basically just about this wedding that's happening. It's on this Irish island and things just start to go bad. Someone dies in the end, and I didn't really like this book. I thought it was really boring. There weren't any characters that I liked, which, I mean, not every book has to have characters that you like, but there's not a single character I cared about, and I was just like, man, I thought it was boring. I didn't think that the ending was really good. I was led to believe that there were going to be multiple people dying when literally only one person died. I don't think that's anyone's fault though. That could have just been my own misconception. I listened to this book on audiobook. Most of these books I listen to on audiobook, by the way, just so you guys know. I just did not like this book. The next book I read is The One, and I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. This book is the reason why I deleted my dating apps. So this book is literally just about this dating app, and it's called The One, and it's basically where people are matched by DNA. And so this is like the holy grail. No one else uses any of the dating apps. Like, you know that when you meet someone on this app that they are your person, they are your soulmate. And so it follows a group of different people. It follows the person who made the app, because now she feels like she wants to fall in love, you know, like she's been a hardworking woman, she wants to fall in love. There is a person who literally matches with this guy and he ends up dying like right when she meets him. There is these fiancés who try the app as a joke. The guy, the fiancé, where the guy fiancés called? They're just called fiancés. Anyways, the guy, he ends up falling in love with another guy, and he's not really attracted to guys, so he's just like, but he ends up falling in love with this guy, so he's like, what the heck? And then it also follows a psychopath, a literal serial killer, but that's not the thriller aspect of this book. I like this book, but I thought it was a bit long. It's like 400 pages, and I feel like 400 pages for a thriller is a little bit too long. At least for me it is. I just like, I kind of got uninterested towards the middle, but every chapter ended off with a cliffhanger, and I really thought that the ending was really good, and I really loved the plot twist in the end, especially when you think about everything that happened in the beginning. Like, it's one of those plot twists where it changes everything that you just read, and so I liked it, but I just felt bored towards the middle, and I was listening to this at work. When I first started reading the book, I was like making my shift go by fast. Towards my like 15-minute break, like right after that is when it started to get boring, and it made my last 2 hours go by so slow. And then I finished it when I got home, and it went by fast, and I was like, okay. The next book I read was The Inheritance Game, which if you haven't been following me, like if you don't follow me on Instagram, if you don't follow me on Twitter, if you haven't watched, I think it was like my most recent video, you wouldn't know that this is a 5-star read for me. This is one of my favorite books that I read so far this month, this year. This book is like Knives Out. I love Knives Out. It's like I watched that movie this year for the first time too, and I fell in love with it. So this book is basically about this girl who was poor. Her mom passed away, and she was living with her half-sister, and so she ends up one day being called to the office and basically told, like, you're about to inherit something from this guy, and she realizes that she does not know who this man is. And so she goes to his house and meets his family, and she ends up inheriting the man's house. She ends up inheriting all of his like other previous things that he had, and everybody in the family is like, what the heck, where's this girl coming from? And the guy who passed away was everyone's, like, it was the grandfather of the youngest people, which was the people in her age. So there were 4 grandsons, and so it was the grandfather of them. So the grandfather loved playing games. Like, his house was literally like a maze, and I love this book so much. I love the main character. She was so smart. I love things with like games and like mysteries and like scavenger hunts. Like, I just thought it was such a fun read. Once again, I was listening to this at work, and it made my shift go by so fast. Like, I was just having so much fun reading this. I didn't want it to end, and it is going to be another book, and I hope that it's just a duology because I just don't think that thrillers work as a sequel. Also, I want to mention, I didn't mention this in my recommendation thriller video, but this book isn't very thrillery, and not at least in my case. Also, sorry if you hear noises. Our boiler broken, so they've been fixing our boiler all day, hence which is why I'm wearing this thick ass sweater. So I really love this book. It was great. So the next book I read was Gone Girl, and this book I gave 3 out of 5 stars. I also watched the movie to Gone Girl, and I loved the movie more than I loved the book. I just felt like the book was good. If you don't know what Gone Girl's about, where have you been? But Gone Girl is basically about this wife that goes missing on her and her husband's 5th anniversary, and the husband is the one being blamed for it. And so I liked the book. I just felt like Amy was a literal psychopath, which I loved. I love Amy. She was so crazy. But I think that in the book there was so long towards the end where I kind of got bored, I guess. And it was just so much going on and so much happening, and the more it went on, the more unrealistic it was to me. But I feel like the movie did it really good because they took out the parts that I was like, okay, this is a bit unrealistic, or okay, this was a bit much. So I feel like the movie worked because it took out some scenes that made it the story too much. The book felt never ending. Like, it literally felt so long. This is like also nearly a 400-page thriller, and I just think that thrillers don't need to be 400 pages at all. The next book I read was The Night Swim, which is another 5-star read that I read this month, and I absolutely ate this book up. I've been talking about this book like all freaking month. This book is basically about this girl who has this podcast, and typically she studies murder cases, but for this one she goes and takes on a rape case in this state. And when she gets to the state, she ends up meeting another girl whose sister passed away a few years prior. And so she's like, hey, my sister passed away. It was perceived as like an accident. Like, it wasn't an accident. No, my sister didn't kill herself. So can you help me? So she's essentially taking on one case for a podcast, but she's taking on another case just to figure out what happened to this girl, because it's like the least that she deserves. And I just thought it was so good. It talks a lot about rape culture and how rape is like the only case where people are questioning the victim. When somebody's murdered, you don't go, what did the victim do? But in rape cases, you're always like, what was she wearing? What was she doing? How was she leading men on? And all this other stuff. And this book is so powerful. It made me so mad because you're actually sitting in the courtroom, and I really liked that. The next book I read was Mexican Gothic, and this was 3 out of 5 star. I really enjoyed this book. This book is about the main character Noemi, because I pronounced her name wrong in my last video that I recommended this book in. My foot is literally falling asleep. So this follows the main character Noemi, and she is sent to go stay with her cousin because her cousin wrote this letter to her father basically being like, yo, I think my husband's trying to kill me, not gonna lie, like I'm really sick. So Noemi is sent to go there to check things out and help take care of her cousin. And I really enjoyed this book. I really love Noemi as a main character. She is Mexican, and she's just such a like baddie. Like, she's such a spoiled rich girl, and I love seeing that in people of color, because you always get like spoiled rich white girls, and it's like, okay. So seeing a spoiled rich Mexican girl, like a spoiled rich person of color, just was like amazing to me. Like, she was out going to parties, like she was a party girl. She did whatever she wanted. She was hard-headed, didn't listen, and I loved her. Like, I loved her, and she was like just one of my favorite things about this book. But the thing that I didn't like was the ending. It just wasn't my kind of ending. I really want to go into like what I didn't like about the ending, but that would be spoilers, so I just didn't personally like. I don't like these kind of books, and so I just didn't like the ending. But I really think that it's a good book. Like, it's still very gothic, horror, like spooky, all of that. I loved every other aspect of it. It was just the ending, so I was like, it really hurt me to give this book 3 stars, even though I really loved the main character. Like, I loved her so much. And so the next thriller I read was The Invisible Girl, and oh my gosh, I hated this book. I am so mad I got this book off Amazon and not from Target, because I could just return it to Target, whereas I just have to like, I think I'm gonna put this book on like Depop once I figure out how to mail stuff. I'm giving away this book because I hated this book. I gave this book 2 out of 5 stars. It's basically about this girl who goes missing. She has this therapist. She had a lot of trauma growing up. So she has this therapist, and she has like this weird relationship with him where like he's finally like, okay, well, you don't need therapy anymore. So she's like, but I want more therapy. Like, she's like in love with him. So she kind of stalks his family, and one day she ends up going missing when she's on his street, and they think that it's like this neighbor. So many problems I had with this book. Like, I feel like it was 3 different perspectives, and one of those perspectives you did not need. One of the guy that they think kidnaps her or does something to her is Owen. and he is this teacher that has been accused of sexually harassing his students and women in general. And so you know what this guy does? He goes on a Reddit forum for incels and he gets date rape judged. Why? Oh yeah, I'm getting suspended for sexually harassing girls. I'm gonna like make things worse for women. That's what you think. It also follows the wife of the husband who's her psychiatrist, and that was useless, to be honest. I just think this book was useless. Simple 911 call would have fixed everything. That's all I have to say. The last thriller I read this month was Killman Creek, and the author recently passed away, so I do want to send my love out for her friends and family. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I have recently read Stillhouse Lake. I read it like 2 years ago and I really enjoyed the book. It was also a 4-star book, so I picked up this book just to continue on with the series, because usually with thriller series I'm like I don't really like thriller series, but this one, she like ends up becoming a PI, and so I was like, okay, period. I'm like obsessed with PI. I love Veronica Mars. Another book I read this month was another PI story, so I was like, okay, I'll pick it up. In the first Stillhouse Lake, she finds out that her husband is a serial killer. He's been keeping people in his garage, killing them and doing other things with them, you can guess, and she doesn't know about it. And so one day she comes home and there's a car in her garage and she's like, what the heck? And they're like, ma'am, we found some criminal things in your garage, like we think you're a part of it. So she ends up like going to jail for like a year or two, and then they find out she's not a part of it. And so she has to like move and change her name because there are people online who are just gross to her. And then her husband ends up breaking out of jail, so she has this fear that her husband is coming back to kill her. And so in the first book he doesn't end up coming back fully, and so I never picked up the book. At that time I didn't know it was a PI series, so I'm like, I'm not about to read a book where it's just the husband following the wife. Like if I wanted that I would go watch a Lifetime movie, but I just decided to go pick up the second book anyways. And this book is just finally her having it out with her husband, her confronting her husband, her dealing with her husband, dealing with her trauma, and the book was so good. The next genre I read from, I'm just gonna do the shorter genre. So the next genre I read from was fantasy, Air Awakens. This book was, it was either a 2 out of 5 star or a 3 out of 5 star. I can't remember. It was one of those. And basically it was so boring. It was by the author. She has another book coming out, How to Deal with the Elf King, coming out this year, and so I was like reading her other books to get into it. I think I gave the book 3 out of 5 stars. And Air Awakens is basically about this girl who lives in a library, and she's a sorcerer's apprentice basically, and she just does all this research and all this stuff, and then she ends up being kidnapped by the sorcerer, and the sorcerers are perceived as evil, and so she ends up being kidnapped by him, and there's literally no plot. Like I gave it 3 stars because I thought it was so boring. It was such a quick audiobook. Once again, I was listening to this at work and it made work drag out so much. Like it was so boring. I didn't like any of the characters. The main character was so annoying, so boring, and the love interest wasn't good. I actually ended up shipping her with, because the sorcerer was like a prince, I ended up shipping her with the brother, which isn't good. And a lot of people say I should continue on with the series because it gets better, but I don't like the main characters. I just don't want to torture myself with having to read a book with a main character that I'm not enjoying. Next I read was Daily Education, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars. This is the UK edition. I have like 4 other editions of it, if you can see, and I love this book. I ate it up. This book is basically about this girl who goes to the school where there's no teachers, no holidays, and you literally have to survive at this school. It's not a lot going on in the book. It's a lot of world building basically, and I loved it. I thought it was so good. It's about the girl named Elle. She is half Indian, half English, and she is attending this school. She's not popular. People don't like her. She doesn't have any friends, so she has to survive in the school. Like, one thing about the school is there are monsters everywhere. Like, kids in the school do not shower often because there are monsters in the showers, and you typically go in groups, and if you don't have any friends, then you can't go anywhere with anyone. You like find somebody to go with and you go with them. And then it's about this guy named Orion Lake who saves her 13 times in this book, and she's like, yeah, I had to kill him because he keeps saving me. And they end up like having this little thing. Like, literally, I love the main character. She is so genius. She literally comes up with this thing. She's like, yo, I literally need friends. Like, I need to be protected in the school. So she starts this rumor that her and this guy are dating, like her enemy, like her and him are dating, and he's always trying to protect her, just basically like to one up her. So he doesn't even notice that she's starting this rumor, and he's just always trying to save her. And I just thought it was like so genius, and I thought the romance was so cute. And she's very like, it's very grumpy ex Sunshine, but the grumpy one is her, and he's he's a sunshine character, and I know there are a lot of things going on around this book, but I honestly suggest checking this book out for yourself before you make any accusations about anything. Everything is not what it seems. No wish is the way we place. The next book I read was Furyborn, which I think I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. So yeah, I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. It was so boring. This book is so hyped, but it's underhyped at the same time. It's very, very weird. But this book is basically following 2 queens 100 years apart. It was so boring. There was no plot line. The only character I liked was Corian, and he barely had any. He was like in 10% of the book, and I did pick up the second book and I DNF'd it because it was so freaking boring. So I'm just getting rid of this whole series. Like, I don't like it. There was smut in the book, which I didn't think was good. There was a queen that I liked. It was the queen that was the one who was back, the past queen. I loved her. A lot of people hate her, I loved her. And then the queen that was like in present time, the one, at least present time that we're reading, I hated her. I thought she was so boring. Every time I read her chapter, she was annoying. Yeah, it just was. Next, we're gonna get into romance, because I did read some romance books. I wasn't going to read any romance this month, but I can't stay away from romance. So I read this one book called The Initiation. It's basically like called like 4 Horsemen series. The only romance I read this month was dark romance, by the way. And like every dark romance book has like a group of guys, like the bad guys, and they're always called the 4 Horsemen. Like basically they have this company going on. They have like this secret society. It's a secret society book, which I really liked because I never read that in a dark romance before. So they have a secret society, but over it, it's just like a regular company that they make their money as. And so the main character, she works as the assistant for the guy on their main company, and she doesn't have any idea that there's like a secret society going on under it. And the main guy, he's like this bad boy. He has tattoos. Like they literally call him the Reaper. I believe they call him the Reaper. And I really like the romance. I give this 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was so good. I did not think I was gonna like this book going in, I'm not gonna lie, but I just thought the romance was so good. And I really love like assistant CEO romances, so this gave me everything I wanted. And then it also was like, it just had like a lot of depth to it. Like he didn't like being the Reaper. Like he didn't like having to kill people and being the bad guy. Like I just thought it was so good, and I thought the romance was really good. And I'm really excited to read the rest of the books in the series. Like I did not think I was gonna like this book. Then I read this series called the Black Mountain series. The thing about it is it's written by different authors. Like each book is written by a different author, and it follows a different plot, and it follows a different character in this school. So there's one book that I read where it followed this guy who was a singer in a band, and everyone was like in love with him, and so it followed his love story. Then it was like a teacher-student one, which I don't like teacher-student romances at all, so I gave that one 2 out of 5 stars. There was a librarian student one, which I was like, that's actually a really interesting concept, but I didn't like it. Then there was a principal student one, which I hated. It was so disgusting. Then there were like normal ones, like a bad boy one. The bad boy one was the one I ended up giving 5 stars. Like that was the best one out of it. The one thing I don't like about this series as a whole is that a lot of the things that are mentioned in other books. Like I'm confused on if they're all set in the same timeline, if they're all like different. Oh, also another book that I followed was one with like 2 parents. They had like kids who went to the school, which I enjoy. I thought that was a really good idea. So like there would be one thing, like in the band one that there was, it was like this, it was rumors going around, but in the other books the rumors weren't heard of. Like it was always rumors going around in each book, but in other books the rumors weren't heard of. The only thing that was consistent was the principal, who was Mr. D. But after I read the principal student one, I was just so disgusted every time I seen him in the book. I just wanted to throw up, so it was like ugh. But it was just like some inconsistency. Like the band was so popular, but it wasn't mentioned in any of. And there's also like there's always a bad boy, but like you can't have 80 bad boys going to your school, you know, like it's just not realistic. So it's just some things in the book that's just like, okay, like y'all really should have sat here and planned things out, because reading the series as a whole there were some inconsistencies that I just like couldn't deal with. And I read 9 of these, by the way. They're really short. They were like, there was one that was 400 pages and I ended up hating that one. It's just like it was weird because there were some that are like 90 pages and it's like, okay, well I don't have enough of the story. The one that I read and gave 5 stars, I don't remember what the name was, but the plot was like, this girl, she went to the school before, and then she had this really bad experience, so she goes away and she comes back and she's literally plotting the revenge of like all these people that did her wrong the first time she left, and she ends up falling in love with the bad boy. And that one I just loved and I ate it up, and so I gave that one like I think 4 out of 5 stars, or no, it was 4 out of 5 stars. I just loved it so much. So some will be like 120 pages, 200 pages, 90 pages. The librarian one, the guy, he was the son of the people who created the school, like, or like wanted like a legacy or something like that. Like his last name was Black, which was like the creators of the school. No, he wasn't mentioned in any of the other books. Like, it was just so many inconsistencies. The next one we're gonna do is comics. So I watched X-Men this month. I am a huge fan of X-Men. Like, X-Men was my Harry Potter. And before I joined booktube, I used to be a comic book nerd, which I don't think anybody knows that because I don't talk about comic books at all. I was like a superhero comic book nerd though. So when I joined booktube and everybody was reading comic books that weren't superheroes, I was like, those exist. So I read New X-Men 1 through 4. It's basically about these X-Men who are new, and they're a new generation of X-Men, but they're not like, they don't have like superpowers and things like that. They're literally just ugly. That's literally the plot line. So they're going to this school, they're going to Xavier school, and the villain for in this one isn't Eric. It's actually one of the ugly mutants. I'm sorry, I don't know what else to call it. And I just thought it was really interesting. I don't rate my graphic novels or comics, so I don't have a rating for this one, but I enjoyed it and I can't wait to continue on. I'm actually only starting this series because I want to start the Uncanny X-Men, which is like the hitman of X-Men, and I'm like, I heard that some of the plot lines in this one, like there's a huge plot line in this one that changes things, and there's also a thing that they're looking for in this book which is called The Cure, and I just wanted to read this one to get like idea. I just want to get back into comic books because I love them so much. Like, I was a huge comic book nerd growing up. Going into classics now, I read A Midnight Summer Dream, which Jocelyn had bought me this edition for my birthday. I'm gonna collect these because these are really pretty, but I'm also gonna be collecting these because these are editions that like have like the English version next to the Shakespeare version. And reading this, I sped through this book. Like, I freaking sped through this book just because like it had like the English translation. I thought this book was so funny. Basically, it's about this girl who wants to marry this guy, but her dad wants her to marry someone else, and if she doesn't marry him, her dad's gonna have her killed. And so it just also has like a lot of other drama in it, and I just thought it was like really fun. Now on to the last part of this video, which is paranormal. This book, Mika, my best friend Mika from Mika August, was always recommending me. Like, she's always like, Mariana, read this book, please read this book, whatever. And I'm like, whatever, like, I'll pick it up. I bought it. That was good enough for me. The book is called Burn For Me. This book was so good. I even like broke the spine. It was so good. I listened to this while I was at work. Amazing. It's about this PI, and this book was just so good. I believe I gave it 5 out of 5 stars or 4 out of 5 stars, but it's basically about this girl. Her name is Nevada Baylor, and she is a PI, and her family, like, this book has set in like magic, so everyone has magic. If she doesn't have any, she is set to look for this guy, and I forget his name, but he is like a villain. He comes from like this really rich family, and she's set to find him. And the guy who hires her, he's like a cop or something, and he has her looking for him because if things go bad, then they can just blame it on the PIs, and like the cops are also looking for him, so it's like whoever finds him first wins. And it's like kind of like a lose-lose for her unless she finds who this man is. And so she ends up running into this guy called Matt Rogan. His name is Connor Matt Rogan, and he's just set to be like super crazy, and he's part of this really rich family that comes from like pure magic. He's like the only son, so he's like really, really powerful, but like he just went, like, he's called Mad Rogan for a reason. So they end up having to work together, and I really love this book because the family in this book was so funny. So there's like a grandma, and there's the mom, and the dad passed away a few years before, and she also lives with like her cousins, and it's just so like, I love the family relationship in this book. Like, they were so funny. So the next book I read was White Hot Kiss, and I think I probably gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I honestly, this book is not memorable, I'm not gonna lie. Like, this book is basically about this girl. She's like half gargoyle, and so she like lives with these humans, and she ends up meeting this bad boy, and he is like basically trying to get her to come over to the dark side because it's like, you're here to protect these humans, but they don't care about you. And it's like a love triangle book, and I really did like the bad boy. Like, I love bad boys, and you don't really read a lot of bad boys in like paranormal books and fantasies and stuff like that, so I really liked it. But I just thought that the book was pretty boring. I'm gonna continue on with the series. Finally down to the last 4 freaking books. So the next book I read was Vampire Academy. This was the 2nd book, and I didn't read the rest of the series this month, but I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I really, really love this book. I'm thinking about the things that happen in this book, and I'm actually really, really sad. Like, I'm very sad. I'm really sad. Okay, so I can't really talk about anything that happened in the book because it's the freaking 2nd book in the series. Just know that me personally, very sad. If you don't know what the series is, it's very popular. You probably know what it is. Like, literally when I posted that I got the box set, everyone was like, oh my gosh, like no one ever talks about this book. Like, I didn't know people read it. Everyone said that too. It lives up to the hype that it got. Very, very good book. So the next book I read was A Discovery of Witches. I actually stole this book from my sister. I had the paperback and my sister bought the hardcover. My sister had read this book. She picked it up. She got to chapter 2. She was like, nah. So I was like, okay, well, I'll pick it up then. And if I love it, I'll keep the hardcover. I will be giving this book back to my sister. I gave this book 2 out of 5 stars. When I texted my sister, I was like on chapter 5 and I was like, why did you DNF this book? Like, I'm on chapter 5, it's pretty good. She was like, the main character was annoying. You know what? My sister was correct. This book is basically about this girl who goes to Oxford, and she's actually grown. She's like 30 something. She comes back to just like help teach there, and she's like working in a library, and she ends up checking out this book. The book ends up being like this book that tells every creature, because there's demons, vampires, witches, it tells them why they are the way that they are. And so everyone wants this book, but it's hard to find. And so she takes it back to the library not knowing anything about it. And she also doesn't want to use any of her powers because her parents died when she was younger, so she just doesn't use her powers. And I just think that this character is the stupidest character ever. And honestly, to be honest, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I think that not using your powers because your parents died is stupid, okay? Like, oh yeah, grief, whatever. But if my parents died, do you know I would be using my power to find out who killed them and to avenge their death? I'm not about to just sit here and be like, I don't want to touch my powers, like my parents are dead, like, because their powers aren't the reason why they died. Like, literally the main character is so stupid to have gone to Oxford. Like, she was like the dumbest bitch I've ever read in my life. Literally, there's this scene where her aunts are talking to her and they're like, why would you put back a book if you didn't know, like if you yourself didn't know what it was about? Like, we've always taught you not to just pick up a book if you read something context in it and you don't want to know what it is. So not everyone in this freaking book is looking for it. And then the romance in this book was so insta-lovey. Like, at first I was digging it. I was like, okay, because she doesn't fall in love with the vampire. So I'm like, okay, like, I'm gonna love it. He literally is like thinking to himself like 10 chapters in, no, not even 10, 5 chapters in, like, oh, I love her. Or like, I'm interested in her. I'm like, sir, you don't know her last name. What do you mean? You just met her. Y'all talked twice. What are you talking about? It was so insta-lovey, and I'm not about to be reading a 3-book series with an annoying bitch and then an insta-love story. Like, I need slow burn. I see why it's not talked about as much on book 2, because it was... Then, my last 2 books were really good books, so no more rants. Okay, so, next book I read was Kingdom of the Wicked, and I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Like, it was so good. The writing was a bit meh, but I also read Stalking Jack the Ripper, and the writing in that book was meh. So this book is about this girl who, she has a twin sister. Her twin sister is passing away, and so she's just basically trying to figure out what happens. And when her sister, she finds her sister's dead body, and she finds this demon standing over it. And so the demons in this world are basically after the 7 sins, so pride, death, whatever. The one that she ends up with is wrath, and basically he is supposed to be death, like he's training to be death. And so a lot goes on in this book, and I really enjoyed it. I really loved the ending, and I can't wait to pick it up. Like, I think that this book ended off really good, and hopefully it's just a 2-book series, because I think that if it's 3, well, I think if it's 3 it would be good too, but hopefully just 3 at max. Like, 4-book series it would not work out, but I ate this book up. Like, I love the main character. I love the magic system. It's basically based off like Latin and things like that, so I really liked the magic system. It made a lot of sense. So I can't wait for the second one. I love this cover. I love the aesthetic. Oh my gosh. Also, this book was sent to me by Fake Crate. They pre-ordered this book for me a few months ago when they were sending books out to people, and I've never been so lucky in my life. Like, the map in this book, like the cover, and then I stuck my note from them in the back, and like I put some little like washi tape that like matches the aesthetic, and it was perfect. And the romance was good, and Wrath was like a little bad boy or whatever, so I also ate that up. Like, I cannot wait to reread this book and to like annotate it and tab it and pick up the second book. Like, I highly suggest picking this book out. And so the last book I actually read this book November 1st, but I'm counting it because I started it October 31st, so it's gonna count as an October read. But that was Cemetery Boys, and I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. Like, I I ate this book up. I went into it knowing I was gonna like it. Like everyone gave this book 5 stars or 4 or 5 stars, so I knew going into this book I was gonna love it. This book is basically about this main character named Yadriel. He is a brujo, and basically he is trying to prove to his family that he is a real brujo. And this family, they believe that like if you are a brujo, or a bruja, you have certain powers. So as a bruja, you have to use animal blood to do magic and things like that. And then as a brujo, you have to do certain things. And so because Gadriel is trans, his father thinks that he just isn't a real brujo. So he summons a ghost, tries to prove that he is a real brujo. And he has a cousin, and her name is Maritza, and she is like his best friend. And I really love that, because when you're, I don't know about like, I know at least for me, like when you're a person of color, your cousin is your bestie. Like in middle school, me and all my cousins went to school together. We were in different classes and different grades, but literally lunchtime we was always talking to each other. My aunt worked at the school. Like I was seeing my family every day of the week, so I know how it feels to like go to school with your cousin and go home with your cousin and see your cousin all the time. Your cousin is literally your best friend in the entire world. And I really love Maritza as a character. Like she was just so amazing. She was vegan, so she really understood Yadriel because she did not use animal, she would do magic but she wasn't going to use animal blood, so she was kind of like outcasted by the family. And so one thing I liked about the relationship is Yadriel accidentally summons this ghost of the school's bad boy Julian, and I love the relationship. Like the first thing that they have, Yadriel's talking about how he's trans and how like he never really gets to talk about his feelings because Maritza's his cousin, like she already knows how he feels. And so he's finally talking to Julian about how he feels, and like Julian just understands, and he gets to like rant about it. And I really just love their relationship. Like Julian was so funny. Like I was always giggling. Anyway, so yes, I love the ending. Oh my gosh, I love the ending so much. Like I almost cried at work. I did cry. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I definitely went to the back to cry one out, because the ending to this book was just so perfect. So yeah, that's all the books that I read in October. I had the best reading month ever. I wanted to push for 31 books, but that's okay. I didn't even read 30, but I'm still gonna title this book reading 30 books because I tried my best. And I'm just so happy that I read so many books. Like I read so many books that I loved, and I can't wait to like calm down with my reading and just get back to like normal reading. Even though I wasn't stressing myself, like I literally was just reading audiobooks all month, just chilling, listening to audiobooks when I was at work, and then come home and watch the movies. Like October was so chill. I didn't get to dress up for Halloween, but comment a score down below, and if you want, let me know your favorite book you read this month and also what you went as for Halloween. I just put like some devil horns on because I had to work that night. But yeah, thank you for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.